Good night, everyone. Thanks for coming out today. My name is Aline. I'm a member of the Brazilian Expats for Democracy and Social Justice. I'm also an activist of the Brazilian Landless movement. And what I'm going to start doing, trying to do a brief introduction of everything that has been going on in Brazil for the past 6 months up to the coup. So I'll try to be real brief because Juliana and Marcos are going to talk about more in that point. So what took place in Brazil was not a regular impeachment process. It was a coup carried out by the Congress, the Brazilian media, and members of the judicial system. It has a lot of similarities to the parliamentary coup that happened in Paraguay in 2012. The impeachment is a mechanism designed for sanctioning criminal activity. However, no proof was ever presented that tied President Dilma Rousseff with corruption or any crime that would merit an impeachment. On the other hand, recent leaked audios show that the political elite behind Dilma Rousseff's impeachment perceived that removing her from office was the only way to keep themselves from being held accountable for their illegal deeds. They are proof of the political motivations of this illegal process. I think it is also important to note that the Workers' Party first took office in 2003, since the Workers' Party first took office in 2003, there has been numerous attempts to implicate high party officials in corruption scandals, so that eventually they would be removed from office. That is to say that this is not an isolated attempt, but this is the most successful attempt from the opposition until now to derail the Workers' Party and impose a neoliberal agenda on the country again. So there are obvious contradictions in this process. For example, many members of the lower house and the Senate that approved the impeachment process are facing accusations of serious crimes such as bribery, election fraud, kidnapping, even homicide. The key promoter was President of the Chamber of Deputies, then President of Chamber of Deputies, Eduardo Cunha, who is accused of receiving millions and kickbacks in hidden accounts in Switzerland. Renan Calheiros is the president of the Senate. He was already charged in the past for ethics violation and tax fraud, and is now facing 3 separate investigations for corruption and money laundering. Calheiros, who used to be a close ally of Dilma's government, was caught on tape suggesting that the political opposition would have to negotiate with members of the Brazilian Supreme Court about the transition of Dilma's government. Note that the now interim president, Michel Temer, is also under investigation for many crimes and has been recently found guilty of electoral fraud, what makes him unelectable for running for office for 8 years. In his very first day at office, the now interim president, Michel Temer, appointed an all-white, all-male, no-youth cabinet, and 2 of them have already resigned because of the leaked audios that implicated them in the plot to oust Dilma Rousseff from her office. Also, he dismantled ministries that were historically connected with the popular movements in Brazil, such as the Ministry of Women, Human Rights and Racial Equality, and the Ministry of Agricultural Development. Many social programs, such as housing, healthcare, education, and income redistribution, were either cut back or cancelled. His cabinet is also discussing changes in labor laws, privatizations, annulment of constitutional rights in the access to health and education, and changes in the law that regulates oil exploitation in the country. The new foreign policy has turned its back to the regional integration process and is now looking towards free trade agreements. And all these changes that I'm talking about, it happened in 21 days that the government is on. So we rolled back 30 years of social struggle in 2 weeks, a little over 2 weeks. So Brazilians are fighting back. And Mike, can you please put?
Yep.
Thank you.
You can go to the
Yeah. So
and the
since
the next one.
since Temer's assuming of the resistance in Brazil grew stronger, thousands of Brazilians take the streets of the major cities almost every day in demonstrations not only against impeachment. We are demanding that our constitutional rights are observed and protesting against the rollback of the social achievements of the past decade and a half. And as you can see on the next. Okay, this is his cabinet, Temer's cabinet, and Dilma's cabinet. 2016, guys, come on, you know. Oh, and they represent this traditional political elite in Brazil that has been, you know, in power since ever and now is back. And I think this image is really representative of this. If you can, please. Here are some of the demonstrations that are taking places. It's happening everywhere in Brazil, in a lot of cities. This one's Brasilia, the capital. São Paulo, Porto Alegre, Rio de Janeiro, many cities, and of course you are not seeing this in any media outlet, traditional media outlet in Brazil or here for that matter. I think there's more pictures. Okay, so all this it is paying off. These demonstrations, what we achieved till now. Temer changed his decision to dismantle the Ministry of Culture, and the popular pressure has made it almost impossible for him and other members of his cabinet to participate in public events. And this is also helping to change the minds of senators who originally supported the impeachment. 2 of them already declared that they regret their votes. But these victories are coming with a price. Members of social movements are being incarcerated for no reason, and the policy is escalating the use of violence to end popular mobilization. This is very illustrative. This one on the bottom, this is an image of the the demonstrations held by the opposition. So how the police goes with them and take pictures and this one was this week in Brazil. Yesterday in São Paulo. This girl was protesting against a gang rape that happened to a 17-year-old girl in Brazil. She was raped by 30 men, and this girl was protest this, and this is how the police reacted. So it is important. We know that the violent repression against popular movements is something historical in Brazil. It has been and continue to happen, but it has escalated in these 20 days. For example, for only this year, 13 members of the Brazilian landless movement has already been killed by state farm. 13, so it's a lot. Just to finish real quick, I just want to make what is to come now. So, members of Temer's cabinet and Temer himself have expressed that they want to expedite the impeachment process since the popular pressure, the involvement of Temer's closest allies in corruption scandals and other crimes, and the lack of legitimacy and international recognition of Temer's government might change some votes in the Senate in favor of Dilma. So they are very afraid that this doesn't go through. Yesterday, the president of the House Committee for the impeachment changed the calendar of the process. So initially it was supposed to, the vote to impeach or not impeach Dilma was supposed to take place on August 1st, right? Mm-hmm. On August 1st, he cut back 20 days of the time that was supposed to be for Dilma's defense. And now it is, the vote is going to take place on July 12th, 14.
I think it's the 12th.
I think July the 12th. So now we have a month to keep mobilizing. Also, and this is very important, the opposition is trying to prevent the defense, Dilma's defense, to use those leaked audios that prove the political motivations of the impeachment and how it has been being plotted for many months now. This week, on Thursday, Dilma had a meet with members of the Workers' Party, and according to O Globo, which is a right-wing newspaper in Brazil, not very, they came to understand that even if the Senate decides not to impeach Dilma, she wouldn't have the conditions to end her term. So the solution, and Dilma seems to agree with it, is to call for a national referendum to consult the society on the anticipation of national elections. So we would do a new referendum and start over again. Social movements, unions, popular movements are calling for people to stay mobilized. The MST, which is the Brazilian Landless Movement, and the Frente Brasil Popular, which is like a union of many popular movements and left-wing parties in Brazil, and who are leading many of these demonstrations, do not support this proposal of new elections. Their understanding is that this outcome would legitimize the coup, and the only solution is to pressure Temer to step down from office. Thank you.
Hello everyone, thank you so much for being here and listening to us. As we were mentioning in the kitchen, it's hard to talk about what's happening because it changes by the minute. And it changes in a negative way, never in a good way. And just to add a little bit of what Aline was saying, today the Secretary of FUNAI, the National Foundation for the Indigenous People, he was exonerated, is that right? He stepped out. And probably the person who's going to be stepping in his place is an evangelical pastor, which means that they will probably keep going forward on evangelization of native people in the Amazon or other reserves across Brazil. So that's one of our big, huge retrocess that's happening. So I will talk a little bit about the corporate media and a little bit about the potential appease, potential involvement, we don't know, of the United States in this whole situation. So Mike, if you can pass to the next and the next and the next. Yeah, that would go back later. So here we have a very interesting chart. So that's supposed to be Michel Temer, the current interim president, and the former president of Congress, Eduardo Cunha, who basically plotted the whole impeachment process. And the logo in the middle is the TV Globo logo. So to illustrate a little bit of TV Globo, here in US I like to say that it's like if you guys had Fox News as your main TV channel. Everyone watched that. They have programs from early in the morning for kids through the evening, and they intercalate news shows with soap operas. So they really keep the whole family watching them all day, and they brainwash everybody's, life. So there is a guy there, we call him Barbudinho. He started this movement of going behind a journalist, a reporter, giving live comments on Globo and saying Globo golpista. I don't know how we could translate that into English, but like, coup supporter, thanks. So that's what Globo has been doing, and it's not the first time. In '64, Globo supported the whole coup. So below here we have the Globo no. So there's a huge movement now protesting against Globo. So we were trying to take Globo out of the way, but it's really hard. We see families from any social class watching this TV channel all day, and they defend the opposition 24/7. So if we can go to the next one. So still talking about the media, and I will here mention a little bit about the sexism problem of this whole coup. There's two big newspapers, the Veja one being a bigger one. So Veja, at least in the state of São Paulo, they receive about 100,000 reais of support from the state government, which has been right-wing for the past 20 years in the state of São Paulo. So basically they just support right-wing governments all along. And then Isto É is basically showing that Dilma is having nervous breakdown as a president, is yelling at people, and just because, it underlines because she's a woman, she has nervous breakdown and she loses control. So the next one, we have the same newspapers portraying Michel Temer. So we don't even need to read what is there to understand the difference in the connotation, the narrative they're showing there, right? I mean, she was first in an old TV saying that she was like a retrocess for the country and yelling and all, and there he is looking good, and I mean, he doesn't never look good, but but anyway, they make it seem like he's the guy. So basically, the editorial line usually in Brazil, in the Brazilian corporate media, involves three types of information. The first one would be to portray the right as a responsible right wing. The right is always the responsible one. And the left is delirious. And women are portrayed as merchandise. Here as well, but in Brazil way more, we have the women's body as a merchandise. Like, if you want to buy beer, you will see a body of a woman. So everything is about the woman, and then Michel Temer's wife, who happens to be 30-something years younger than him?
43.
43, thanks Louisa. 43 years younger than him. She used to be a beauty pageant, and he's 60-something now anyway. So Veja published a note saying that she was beautiful, she was well behaved, and she was someone of the home. Like, she stayed home, and that's how the woman should be. Woman shouldn't be a president and yelling and doing things. Anyway, so that's pretty much our media, our corporate media. Right now, the left has been growing stronger, thanks to this turmoil, and a lot of bloggers, small bloggers, have been showing the real news, which the corporate media doesn't do. So, okay, now I'll switch a little bit the topic, and I will talk about something that many still say that it's just a conspiracy. Many says, yeah, it's for sure, it's clear. We don't know, and as it happened in '64, we probably know a little bit later. There will be more proof. So right here, this is Liliana Ayalde. She is the current ambassador in Brazil. She's probably stepping out in a few days, as I heard. But she was in Paraguay from 2008 to 2011. So that's a clue. And she's been ambassador in Brazil since 2011 up to now, or last week. We don't know. News are changing. So here we have Lincoln Gordon and Ella Johnson, and there's an audio we can play later where Lincoln Gordon is informing Ella Johnson of who João Goulart, the president who was overthrown in '64, who he was and how communist he was, which he could be, but he wasn't. He just had progressive land reforms and other leftist policies taking place. So this audio is public, is on the website, I mean online, everybody can find. So Liliana Ayalde, talking a little bit now about her role and the media. So she was given space to, to write an op-ed to the newspaper O Globo, very right-wing, part of the Globo TV news and everything. Where the title of her op-ed was Trade Partnership, Brazil is an essential market for American corporations. So somewhere in her article she says, we will deepen our collaboration on trade, investment and innovations. So that's a clue, right? You know, the US hasn't been really openly said anything yet, but yeah, they probably will at some point. So if we can go to the next slide, where is it? Oh. So here we have like a video where if we pay close attention, if people here, US officials, are asked about their real opinion on what's happening, the lack of diversity in the cabinet, the retrocess against Native Americans, I mean, Native Brazilian, and Afro-descendants and all that, they really don't know how to answer. If you pay close attention, the cookie-cutter answer, as I like to say, they really get lost. So the cookie-cutter that we've seen so far is that we believe in the strength of Brazilian institutions. So it gets weakened every time they're confronted in moments like we can show here really quick. That was on May 13th.
I've seen the interim government has been formed or is pretty close to being completely formed, and there are no women on it, very few, if any, minorities. I'm just wondering if you have any thoughts about the inclusivity or lack thereof in this new government, and if it causes you any concerns.
Well, we obviously are continuing to follow political developments there. These matters of the government and the composition of it are internal matters for the Brazilian people and the Brazilian authorities to decide and speak to. What we are confident is that we're going to keep that Brazil will work through the political challenges that they're facing in a democratic way, and that we will continue to look for ways to work with the new government going forward.
Okay, that's, okay, but this administration, and Secretary Clinton was the secretary, and Secretary Kerry as well, has put great emphasis when they go abroad to talk about it, particularly including women in positions of government. The phrase, no country can perform to its full outcome if 50% of the team is on the bench, has been, that's been a recurring theme in countries all over the place. So I'm a little bit surprised that you don't, does that not apply to Brazil?
We're not walking away from that sentiment at all. And that, you've heard the Secretary speak much about the power of diversity here at the State Department and in democracies overseas. And we still believe that for a democracy to achieve its full potential, it does need to include and represent all manners of society.
Why wouldn't you be concerned about this situation in Brazil?
What I'm saying is that they're going through a period of significant political challenge now. We're watching this and following it as closely as we can. We believe that Brazil has a strong enough democracy to work through all this, and we're also convinced that because the relationship is so important, that we will continue to have a strong bilateral relationship with Brazil. But largely, generally speaking, obviously, more diversity is always a better thing.
The last one is
Isn't that crazy, guys? I mean, really? And to topple that, WikiLeaks, thanks WikiLeaks, has released some information about Michel Temer, the interim president, being related to the CIA, I mean not related, an informant to the CIA. And then we have Glenn Greenwald, as probably you guys know about, the former journalist from The Guardian. He lives in Rio, he's in Brazil, he's married to a Brazilian. And he's been talking a lot about what's happening, and he's fearless. He doesn't care. He's not getting money from the corporate media, so he's just doing his job, as many journalists should. And he's been aggressive about it, and now some of the corporate media has been saying, oh, he's wrong, he should get out of Brazil, and things like that. So this is what we see here. And then many people can argue, oh, but isn't that good for Brazil to maintain bilateral relationships, bilateral agreements with the U.S.? I mean, really, you know. So we'll talk a little bit more the economic issues on this with Marcus, and yeah, this is it for now.
Okay, good evening, everyone. Thank you for hosting us here. I'm very happy to be with U.S. socialists. In Latin America, people usually say that democratism has killed socialism wherever in the U.S. But I see you guys organizing here, and also see lots of supporters to Bernie Sanders. I know that you guys maybe are pretty much into Bernie Sanders, but I see young people in the U.S. accepting more the speech of socialism, questioning. And I think that's something new for me as Brazilian, as Latin American, living here not for very long. I was quite surprised to see that. I'm very happy to be here with you. I also want to say that I am 31 years old, and I think we are living the most serious political crisis of our generation. And that's why I'm also here, exposing myself and trying to share with you what are we living in our country, in Brazil. I came to DC a few years ago. So I came to the US to serve the government of the first woman ever elected in Brazil. And after these things happening, I have decided to resign. So I'll be leaving the country at the end of July, because I'm not being part of what's happening there. So before, I mean, Julian asked me to speak something about the economics. I have a plan to say something, but before that I want to say why the left in Brazil is saying that it's using the rhetoric of a coup. Everyone is asking me why these people saying it's a coup, and I try to organize a very simple answer, so maybe you can keep that in mind. And it's just basically three little things that can explain why this process it's quite easy to question this process. And the first is the legal issue. I think Aline was reading you guys that the impeachment is something in a presidential system. It's an instrument to remove a criminal from power, and you can easily question the legality of what they are doing there. It's like a typical case where they had the criminal and they were looking for a crime. They were looking for fiscal maneuvers to try to use it as a juridical excuse to move the process. So that's the first thing. It's the legality of the process you can question. The second thing of why this process is very weird is on the legitimacy. Yeah? They are doing all this process to do a political shift in Brazil. That's why they are doing that. So we are having a right-wing shift, and the agenda they are trying to implement now, this agenda has no support from votes. Okay, actually they lost 4 elections. The so-called neoliberal agenda, they lost 4 elections in a row, and now they are implementing after this process. They are implementing this agenda. So the second issue is the legitimacy of the agenda these old and white men are carrying on. And the third element that altogether combine and explain why you can question this so strongly is that a lot of people, they are supporting this process. They are being under investigation, and they hope once they get in power, they're going to have a Minister of Justice that will stop the federal police on investigating them. And we had leaks recently that just proved that they were organizing a coup and saying explicitly, take it easy guys, once Temer is there, he will stop that. So they explicitly say that. So these three elements, I mean, it's a very strong argument that we have to use and say, okay, we can question this process. Okay, so what I plan to talk about is about the economic aspects, and I think I would highlight what are the main policies we had in the last 13 years of Workers' Party, and I would say briefly what were the changes we had in the Brazilian society and why the society reacts, why the right wing reacts. And I would finish saying, I mean, what are the old new policies that they are trying to implement. I'll try to be brief and not so boring. So a lot about the economic and social policy. I think the main, first of all, I wouldn't say that the Workers' Party, they are not an extreme left party, right? They were never as tough as Chavez or as Korea. They were always doing something very soft left. Okay? There were no nationalization programs. There were no on the international agenda. There was never conflicts with any nation. It was very multilateralist aspect, very soft left. Okay, and the main economic and social policies. I think that the main idea is not to differentiate what is social policy, what is economic policy. I think that's something new they did, because sometimes people say, okay, on the economic side I'm going to do cuts, I'll be orthodox, but I'll have social policies. I think that the good thing that it took some time to Lula to do that. In the beginning he was more orthodox.
This one?
The next one.
The next one.
Sorry, that one. Yeah.
No, they're just pictures.
Yeah,
It's
it's
okay.
just illustration.
I think the main idea is to combine social policies and economic policies. So the idea is that if we can give income to poor people, these people will expend money and this will help the economy grow. I think that was basically what happened. And the most known is the Bolsa Família. Bolsa Família is a conditional cash transfer program. It reaches something like 50 million people, which is 25% of the population. It's very big, but it's conditional. So if your kids go to school and if they do the medical exams, you're gonna have a little amount of money. You're gonna have $50. It's not that much money, but it's just enough to keep kids going to school, keep kids having exams, and it allows them to get rid of hunger, to get rid of extreme poverty. It's a very focalized program, and the benefit is given to the women, and this had another impact in society. This empowered women a lot in very poor communities. This is the most famous policy that it was done, but that's not the only one, right? Even the World Bank accepted that Bolsa Família is really good, and Bolsa Família has been widespread everywhere. So there were other policies that the usual orthodox economists don't say, and I would highlight some of them. The first one is minimum wage. It was throughout the whole period a systematic increase of minimum wage. And that came together with formalization of labor markets, because usually people say, well, if you increase minimum wage, you're going to generate unemployment, you're going to generate informality, and the effect was exactly the opposite. It was, especially because people were spending more money and the economy was responding to that. So the first idea is that you give more income to poor people, they're going to go out, spend, and make the economy grow. In the same sense, huge housing program. It's called Minha Casa Minha Vida, or My Home, My Life. And they built, during first Dilma term, they built something like 4 million houses. It's a huge program. And that impacted the economy as well, not only housing to people. There were other programs. I would say one that is very important, that during the last 10 years, or I don't remember when exactly, but they found in Brazil, at the sea, I don't know how to say that in English, they found huge reserves of oil in Brazil that they were unknown, and that makes Brazil one of the top 5 or top 10 owners of oil reserves. and the government made a legislation that states that the state-owned company, which is Petrobras, has to be part of every exploitation project. So if a foreign company wants to come, it needs to be in a joint venture with Petrobras. So the state has a lot of control on the exploitation of these resources. And in addition to that, the royalties that comes from these resources must go to education. On 75% must go to education, and 25% goes to health. The idea of going to education also science and technology. So the idea, okay, we can use these resources, but so in the future we can give a step forward and have clean technology. That was the main idea. So we can do education, technology, and health. Huge increases also on public health. In Brazil we have, I know this is a big agenda for US socialists, for Bernie, he's talking about universal health care system. In Brazil we do have a public system that is it's public, free and universal, which means anyone can go there and you can have everything. Of course the system needs more funding. We have lines, it's not a perfect system, but we have a system that was designed in the end of the 80s when we made our constitution, and this system was received lots of funding and lots of new programs. One program that got really famous is a program that brought foreign doctors to work in our public systems, and most of them came to Cuba. So then the right-wing people said, "Oh my God!" So yeah, they came from Cuba, right? Yeah. So most of these doctors, they came from Cuba because to go to the poorest areas, it's really hard to convince a Brazilian doctor to go there. And I don't blame them. I understand. Me as an economist, I don't want to go work in the middle of the jungle. So they were opening positions to go there, and the Brazilians were not applying. So they did a program to bring doctors from abroad, and most of them came from Cuba. And these gave access to they had until now they had 50-something million people that got a doctor appointment with this foreign doctor. So it was also a huge impact. So we had a set of policies that were made during this period, and these generated, let's say, some changes in Brazilian society. Brazil, as any other Latin American country, is a very unequal society. It's a place where very few families, they have lots of income and wealth, while the whole population is in deep poverty. And the country is still very unequal. These policies didn't change. We're not like Sweden after all this. Of course, we moved a little bit, but the society reacted a lot. Okay. I think this is the second thing I wanna talk about. That we had this policy that made people on the bottom of the society have higher wages. They have now access to theater. They have access to cinema. And now they fly on airplanes, and the airport gets crowded. And the traditional elites, they got pissed off. The feeling that you lost in relation to them, it's really strong. If you look on the decomposition of income on deciles or percentiles, I don't know how to say that, deciles or deciles. If you look, if you open percentiles, you can see that everyone was growing throughout the period of growth of the economy, but the people on the bottom, they're growing on a higher pace. So if you're in the middle, you have the feeling that you're losing, even though you're growing. Even though you're even financing your apartments using the state-owned bank with subsidized credit, but the feeling you have is now that these people that belonged to the kitchen before, now they're going to the airport with you. And this generates anger, generates polarization, and I think also the Workers' Party has a lot of guilt on that, because they didn't work very well on the politicizing people, and I believe that this time the left needs to evaluate. There are so many mistakes. Maybe we can talk about that during the Q&A session. But I think this is the second aspect I want to highlight. That's okay. We had some policies, and these policies generated some change. That change didn't make Brazil be a perfect society, but the little move you make in a very unfair society, the very little movement you make in a society that is that has been living with privileges, the little move you make, it reacts very strongly. Okay? And on top of that, we had some people from the Workers' Party involved in corruption scandals, and that was the argument the media had and the right wing had to kill you. Okay? So, look, they are robbers. You have to kill them. We have to get rid of them. And this is not the first time it happened in history. Mariana is a historian; she can talk about that. But in the past, that was always the excuse to remove workers' government. So we had this in '64 when there was a coup. We had during Vargas. Vargas, I used to say that it was our Peron. So they were also accusing him of corruption. So this is a very strong argument against left wing. So this is the background we have on the coup. And just to finish, the last thing to say that is about the legitimacy of this government is that now, when they take power, they start an agenda that is, they call it a market-friendly agenda. Well, it's basically an agenda to cut. They're cutting expenditure. They already cut the My House, My Life, or My Home, My Life. They had which is the housing program has been cut. Well, now we don't have budget for this, and they have cut health, so the social sector. They're cutting in education, so they are trying to come back with the new liberal agenda very strongly. Now they are proposing a new fiscal rule that would limit expenditure increases, and all the idea of trying to do a more progressive fiscal revenue system. It's going away. There was a discussion on doing taxation on financial transactions. This discussion is out. Some people are trying to bring back, but this discussion is out. So it's pretty much a shift in the political, in economic policy and social policy, right? So they came to power with this process that it's strongly questioned legally, and they are doing at this time a political shift. And this political shift has support from media and from corporations. And I think this is what we are living at this time. I don't know if I spoke too much or too confusing. And again, thank you for hosting us.
Well, just while all these cuts are happening, social programs, yesterday was just approved a raise in the salary of the judges in the Supreme Court. Like, extreme.
Right. It's just a coincidence.
Yeah, it just happens. No. I mean, no. So, as we were saying before, the protests have been happening. We are getting some results, like Temer ended the Minister of Culture, and then people protested all over Brazil, and then just artists, famous singers, everyone being part of the protests. And here, I just like maybe to cool off a little bit the air. I will show this video here that is that happened in Rio. There's an orchestra, and all they're saying is "Fora Temer," "Get out Temer," in a song that everybody here knows. So it's not playing.
fim de um Ministério de Cultura representa um fim de um dos pilares da sociedade. É um ataque direto à sociedade.
A gente não aceita o Ministério da Cultura num governo golpista. A gente só quer um Ministério da Cultura num governo democrático, num governo progressista.
Está aqui para derrubar o Temer e por um Ministério da Cultura em um novo momento político. A gente luta isso, para empoderar o papel da arte na sociedade.
Muito sintomático, né? Um governo que é só de homens, brancos, cis, héteros, enfim, não tem jovem, não tem negro, não tem índio, não tem mulher. Claro, é um governo que ele não é legítimo.
É sobre racismo, é sobre transfobia, é sobre machismo. E esse retrocesso a gente não vai deixar acontecer sem resistência.
Você tem um ministério sem mulheres, você tem um ministério fraco.
A civil brasileira é muito mais rica, é muito mais diversa do que aquela minoria encastelada daqueles velhacos.
One of the protests that happened in every state of Brazil. All the 26 states and Brasilia had protests like that happening, and the Secretary of Culture, the Ministers of Culture, the Occupy movement took over very seriously on that. As I said before, that was an occupation, but that's only one. Like many other ones were happening in small towns and in big cities and everywhere. Very popularly known singers, as you guys probably know, Caetano Veloso, many other, Chico Buarque, other singers took over and participated on this, and Temer backed off. So now we have the Minister of Culture. So we like to say, like, if we push a little hard, if we get beat by police, we have to keep fighting. He'll little by little, give in a little bit. Of course, we're not as strong, but we're trying not to lose hope. And even if, we're saying here, we're protesting here in DC, so it's different. We see the videos of the protests happening and the reaction of the military police. And we feel like, oh, we want to be there, we don't care if we're going to beat up the police. We really want our democracy back, and it's easy for us to be protesting here, but at the same time it's hard, because sometimes we feel like we're not getting the results we want. But, so this is just to illustrate that people are resisting, people are suffering the consequences, but we all know that's what we need. And just to end, the left movement has been growing enormously, and that's the chance for our democracy just to come back. Like Marcos was saying, our new constitution has only 27 years. Like, it was born in 1988, and now it's gone. And we're having a government that we didn't vote for. We didn't vote for a neoliberal agenda, and that's what we're having now. So we're all fighting back, and we really hope that by July 12th or whenever this voting will happen, we will get a different response from the United States, that we know that it plays a key role in all this, and we will, we have the hope, even though it's little, might be a little utopic, but we thank you all for giving us this room to talk. And we welcome any questions or anything you guys have.